Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
And greetings to you once again, music lovers, conversationalists, and thrill seekers all across the fruited plain. It's time for more broadcast excellence from the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. It's great to have you here. You know, the risk of sounding deplorable. I couldn't help it. I'm watching Obama give his swan song address to the United Nations. And by the way, it looked just like the cantina scene in Star Wars again. That the General Assembly just does. And Obama's up totally talking about himself and how great he's been and how great America was and is, and he limited his apologies, and it was a typical, I've been really good, underappreciated, and you all gonna miss me when I'm gone. That's basically what he said. But while he was talking, I couldn't, and I know it sounds deplorable to say this, I said it proudly, but I was just imagining how much fun it would be to hear Trump addressing the UN. I mean, can you imagine if Trump wins? 1 year from now, it'll be Trump addressing the UN. Can you imagine the buildup to that? Can you imagine the threatened boycotts? It might even, a number of people have suggested it would be better if we just close the UN and take it out of business. Trump might be able to accomplish that just by winning the presidency. So I was having all kinds of fun imagining what that whole scenario would look like. Anyway, folks, we have highlights, sound bites of Obama's swan song address. There is a great, this is in fact the one. There is a column today by Victor Davis Hanson at National Review Online. And the headline title, I don't know that he wrote the headline. I'm just giving you the identifier here. Never, never Trump. This is the definitive piece criticizing the Never Trumpers for their decision to oppose Trump at all costs, even if it means the election of Hillary Clinton. And when I say it is the one, it's the definitive. It's the piece that everybody who is really bothered by the Never Trumpers and can't understand why in the world they would do anything that would facilitate the election of Hillary Clinton, although we do know why, get in trouble mentioning why, because it offends them. But, I mean, there I don't know, a couple dozen reasons, but 3 or 4 primary reasons why the Never Trumpers are Never Trumpers. But Victor Davis Hanson slices and dices. It prints to 10 pages, so I can't read the whole thing. And it's well worth your reading, so I'm sure by now Coco's going to link to it. And I will highlight certain aspects of it as the program unfolds before your very eyes and ears today. But I think people are stealing from me. Do you remember last week? Yeah, it was last week. Last week was the week after Hillary had the seizure and the near collapse, being thrown into the van after the 9/11. Yeah. And I offered an idea to Trump. I said, with the first debate, you should show up with a surgical mask. Because they said she had pneumonia. And pneumonia is contagious. Well, they said hers was non-contagious, mild bacterial pneumonia. And I said, Trump, you should show up with a surgical mask. It's just, and of course, the outrage over that would just be incalculable. Well, guess what? Jimmy Fallon did it when Hillary showed up on the show last night. This on the Tonight Show. We have the audio of this. Jimmy Fallon interviewing Hillary Clinton, and here's his introduction. It's soundbite number
Tonight Show. Welcome to Hillary Clinton. Welcome. Oh, thank you so much. It is great to have you here. Let's talk about everything. Thank you so much for being
welcome. I am not contagious.
Right, so he's got the surgical mask on, so she's obviously in on the joke. So my idea has been purloined. before Trump could get to it. But anyway, she would not have been on it had it been Trump's idea, and the media would not have been on it. Can you imagine? And I know some of you detractors. Is that all you want to do, Rush? Is that all you want to do? Just you want to continue to shock and just want to outrage? No, that's not all I want to do. As I say, I'm fantasizing. I'm thinking about some of these things that could well happen based on, experience guided by intelligence. That will never happen, but you'd still love to see them happen. Try this. I'm going through show prep today. Run across this headline. Hillary Clinton vows to speak directly to white people to stop racial police shootings. It's a Breitbart story today. The subhead, Democrat presidential nominee Hillary Clinton vows that she will tackle the racism in the nation's law enforcement system. We got to tackle the systemic racism, this horrible shooting again. How many times do we have to see this in our country? She said in an appearance on a radio show. Clinton was specifically referring to the police shooting of Terrence Crutcher in Tulsa, Oklahoma, saying he'd had his hands in the air when he was killed. Clinton told Harvey that if the African-American community came out and voted for her, she would work to stop racial shootings by police officers. Maybe I can by speaking directly to white people. Look, this is not... How would she do this? I mean, we know how she speaks when she goes to Selma. When she goes to Selma. Ain't no way, tard. She gets that black African-American dialect, well, as good as she can. How would she speak to white people? Hillary Clinton vows to speak directly to white people. There are no statistics, by the way, anywhere that support any of this that she is inciting. The Fraternal Order of Police have endorsed Trump, but here she is. If you wonder why you can't shake Trump, if you wonder why you're not at 70% at Trump's at 30%, this is why. It's patently obvious. The establishment types still to this moment do not understand why Trump supporters support Trump. They don't understand what the primary objections that people have to them are. But the worst thing is they don't care. That's what in the establishment, in the bubble, the elite circles, you can get away with not caring. But it's still, speaking of that, yes. I got an email. The first thing I saw when I woke up this morning, I had an email about this situation with Kathleen Kennedy was at the home of George H.W. Bush last night. What it was, he started the 1,000 Points of Light Foundation. That was one of his campaign slogans in his first term. And I, of course, am point of light number 773 in the 1,000 Points of Light. And there was a reception, cocktail party of sorts at the Bush family home in Maine, I believe it was, last night. And it's intended to be a bipartisan effort that demonstrates the ability of disparate groups of people to work together toward solutions to the common goal. So 1,000 Points of Light is what you would think a bipartisan Republicans and Democrats, leftists and rightists can come together and show that they can agree on helping people through poverty or whatever. Ostensibly, there's no witnesses to this. Apparently what happened, Kathleen Kennedy was talking to George H.W. Bush. She posed for a picture with him. And then the next thing she knows, she posts the picture on Facebook and claims that 41 told her that he's voting for Hillary. Now, there's nobody that saw it. I have it on good authority. There are no witnesses to this. All we have is Kathleen Kennedy, the last name Townsend, and her assertion. And, of course, the Bush family spokesman, when asked about it, his vote is private. He has never intended to announce who he's going to vote for and isn't going to announce. They're taking that. Hey, it's a non-denial. They would have denied it. So now the word's out there that George H.W. Bush told Kathleen Townsend Kennedy, or Kennedy Townsend, she's going to vote for Hillary. And there's really no way of knowing. You just have to take it on faith one way or the other. The what do you think about this, though? What do you think of Kathleen Kennedy? I mean, this is I know it's 1,000 Points of Light Foundation type meeting. And trust me on this, you can't assume that everybody that shows up at these things considers it an off-the-record kind of event. It's not really supposed to be political. So Kathleen Kennedy thinks she hears something or makes it up, or he did say it. We don't know. But then she goes to Facebook and puts it out all over the world. What do you think of that? I know she's a Kennedy, and she may not have known that. I understand this. But the likelihood is that she knew exactly what she was doing. So she's in the living room of the former president of the United States, and they're having a chat, I guess. And she decides to divulge part of what was said. And so I can't give you any insight over what the truth is. I wasn't there. And I'm not going to play the game of guessing based on how I know. I mean, I know George H.W. Bush, and he's in his 90s. There's a lot of things you could say, but all of it would be speculation. So I don't think it's going to matter anyway. This is the bottom. Even if he did say it, and Kathleen Kennedy Townsend's out there saying it isn't going to matter. I mean, it's. I think if something like that is something that Hillary needs, then she's in bad shape. If Hillary needs the so-called endorsement, we can't call it that. That's not what it was. If Hillary Clinton needs for her to be successful, for it to be known that George H.W. Bush is going to vote for her, she's got to be in some big trouble. That ought to be a non-event. That ought to be in the real world. Hillary Clinton would reject that. If this were any other time, Hillary Clinton wouldn't want any part of the support of a Republican. They would give the left too many fears and concerns about her. I mean, these leftist freaks and extremists, oh my gosh, George Bush is supporting her. And see, we told you, Bernie's the guy. It would create a ton of problems for her in a normal cycle. The fact that she needs it, or that Kathleen Kennedy Townsend thinks that she needs it. We have the polling data from yesterday that we shared with you that Hillary is in deep doo-doo with Hispanic voters, is not being treated enthusiastically by African-American voters. In fact, how about this? Where was it that it was that fundraiser. It was that fundraiser, 65 people, where Obama blamed me and Fox News for Hillary's problems. You note that hasn't made a lot of news, by the way. And the reason it hasn't made a lot of news is precisely because Obama said it to a bunch of donors. 65 people that paid a lot of money to be there. And let me briefly explain how these things work, because I went to one of these here in South Florida with George W. Bush. If you heard the story yesterday, please indulge me. So Bush is coming in for an appearance for donors. And these things are events where Bush, the candidate, thanks the donors, extends to them his appreciation, lets them inside. I mean, these people are giving a lot of money. And so they have to get something in return. Not all of them are going to get what they want policy-wise. So the president, and I'm sure Obama did the same thing at his, Bush came in and spent 45 minutes going around the world, telling these donors the lay of the land, who he was dealing with, what he was doing. And there were a couple of times when he was 45 minutes, not one stutter, not one pause, not one moment of appearing not knowing what he was going to say next. It was totally unlike the George W. Bush that you all saw on television. It was decisive. It was confident. And a couple of times during his remarks to the donors, he looked right at me and said, "Don't you dare say any of this on the radio." And I put my arms up and I went, "Who, me?" "Yeah, you. You don't say a word about this." Because this is for the donors. These are things you don't say in a speech. It's extending this insider status to the donors. They're paying a lot of money. You got to give them something back. Well, that's what Obama was doing. He had 65 people, and he's out there, and he's telling these donors, they're all worried. Why Hillary Clinton appears to be in the sewer. They can't get her out of the sewer. She's in big trouble. They think she's at 70 or should be at 70%. She's barely ahead of Trump in some polls, losing in others. It looks like a dead heat right now, including the Electoral College, and they're panicking. And these donors want to know from Obama what's going on. So Obama tells them that the reason Hillary is looked at negatively by so many people is because of Fox News and me. If people, all they do is watch Fox News and listen to Rush Limbaugh, then they're going to have a distorted view of it. Now, why single us out? Because we're the only two that he can't control. He can't control Fox. He can't control what happens on this program. That didn't make broad news. You know, the news networks didn't spend a lot of time on it because it wasn't publicly stated. And as such, it was a fundraiser that took place in coordination with Hillary being in trouble. Well, just like this Points of Light Foundation thing at the home of George W. Bush last night, donors, when they leave these things, they don't talk. It's a traditional thing that you respect, the privacy, particularly in this case of the host, the former president. So I think that Kathleen Kennedy Townsend running out there and posting this, the fact that this is done because Hillary needs a boost, tells us quite a lot about the Democrats' assessment of the Hillary campaign. You know, she's taking a day off today. She had a rally. I guess she had 300 people show up somewhere. Where was it? North Carolina, 300 people showed up. That's an exhausting rally for Hillary. That's a lot of people. That's about 100 people more than show up for a book signing. So she's taking the day off. Anyway, I have to take a break. Sit tight, my friends. We'll be back with much more right after this. No, you stop and think how much the Clintons and the Democrats hate. Well, not the Clintons. The mainstream Democrats, how much they hate Bush. Now, you might think it's George W. Bush they hate, and they do. But it's not just him. The Democrat Party spent 7 years destroying George W. Bush with the help of the media. And the last 4 years of his term, the second term, they destroyed Bush. They destroyed the war on terror. They did everything they could to destroy the success of the war in Iraq. And now all of a sudden here comes, supposedly, according to Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, George H.W. Bush saying he's going to vote for Hillary. In the normal flow of things, they would have problems with this, but they apparently don't. It's looked at as a positive for Hillary. And by the way, her rally was at Temple University of Philadelphia, 200 people, not 3. I was exaggerating. She only had 200 people show up. And no, I didn't donate any money to go to the George W. Bush fundraiser. I'm a powerful, influential member of the media and was invited to be there by the hosts of the event, which are people who live part of the year here. Well, I was invited with the knowledge of the presidential advance team and so forth. And I was even in the reception line when the president arrived and the donors showed up. But no. I didn't have to donate any money. Not everybody that shows up. I mean, you get some stragglers and so forth. But no. If I had donated, believe me, the drive-bys would have told you. If I had given money to anybody, they would ferret out those records and they would be publishing every bit of information because I've done it a couple of times way back in the 90s. And it happened, and they found out, and they made a big to-do about it. Anyway, we'll get to the audio soundbite, some of what Obama said at the Star Wars bar scene when we get back. Don't go away. Listen to this. This is Harvey Levin, TMZ. TMZ. This is the Gen X and millennial generations, one of their top 5 networks. It's a gossip network. It finds scandal about public. Oh, you know what? I'm surprised there's any news at all today. Have you heard this? Well, it's no big deal to me, but I'm surprised that the networks haven't shut down. Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. It's not working. It's sayonara. It's kaput. It's just the end of everything a lot of people have believed in. And you know what? The supposed dispute is over. As she has grown older, she is growing more serious. This is just what they say. I have no idea. They have 6 kids. And she wants to move to some, well, they already live. They live in France and they live in, she wants to move somewhere remote, desolate, and raise these kids. And Pitt doesn't want to do that. He wants to stay and hang around in Hollywood. If you were Brad Pitt, where would you rather be? But then, after all of that, a little bit of news trickled out that puts it all in perspective. And apparently, Pitt recently started a movie with a French hottie by the name of Marion Cotillard. I don't know how to pronounce her name. It's Cotillard. And I botch French every time I try to pronounce it. So it just looks like Cotillard. I know it isn't. Apparently, he's been what did Colin Powell say about Bill Clinton and the bimbos up at Chapel? I can't say that. Yeah, you can say it. I can't say it. How would you Colin Powell? I mean, in one leaked email thread, your entire image as Mr. Clean, Mr. Unopinionated is destroyed because of your description of the way Bill Clinton runs around with floozies. Anyway, Brad Pitt was rumored to have had, she hired a private eye. Angelina Jolie had a private eye and found out that Brad Pitt was doing a nasty with what's-her-face, Cotillard. And that's where we are. And it is devastating a lot of people today. And that's why I can't really believe that news is still happening, rather than this being a national day of sorrow and shock. Because to so many people, I mean, that was what they aspired to, that kind of life, that kind of supposed relationship. Just another lesson to all of you. Nothing that you know nothing about, nothing is ever what you really think it is. Particularly in this era, this day and age, where everything is spin, everything is narrative, everything in the news is essentially the script of the daily soap opera. You're really much safer being suspicious of everything as reported. Everything. Whatever it is you think you know, doubt it until you can confirm it yourself. Now, this leads me, I was going with TMZ and Harvey Levin, who is the founder, the head honcho, and the conscience, if you will, behind the TMZ network. And he was, where was he? He was TMZ Live, the co-host Charles Latoubrier speaking with Harvey Levin about Jimmy Fallon, about the criticism that Fallon is receiving for his interview with Trump last week. Apparently, he was too nice. He was too engaging. He was too accommodating. It wasn't supposed to, like, can you believe? I still can't believe, I really can't believe this. Folks, I can't believe the way they, on the left, everywhere, are dumping on Matt Lauer. You know, Presidential Forum, he first goes out there with Hillary, and the controversy is he was wearing an earpiece, and somebody in the booth was urging him to not let go of Hillary and her email question, to keep hammering and hammering. And Hillary got visibly upset, and there was nothing unusual. There was nothing wrong with his line of inquiry. In fact, it's the kind of questions that Hillary should be getting every day. So Matt Lauer asks them. And to this day, you open the New York Post or the New York Daily News, and you'll read the latest story about how Lauer is in dire straits. NBC's throwing him under the bus. Everybody at NBC thinks it was a horrible job. He may lose his career over this. It's incredible. And you couldn't get more protected than Matt Lauer before this. You couldn't get more cemented in the approved relationships of the upper echelon of the ruling class and the establishment. From New York to the Hamptons, he was it, and they've thrown him overboard. It's the stories about even the NBC brass. I'm sure Lauer is up there scratching his head saying, I just did what they headpiece, the earpiece, and he was accused then of going easy on Trump. Because, you see, there isn't any media today. There isn't any news. The purpose of media today is to keep reporting and reporting until the viewpoint they want you to have, you have it. It's about creating opinion. It is about establishing and creating opinion. It's not about bias so much, although you can't do that without bias. It's not about lack of objectivity. The media's purpose now is to make and create the opinions that they want people to have. And Lauer did not facilitate that in either the way he interviewed Hillary or he interviewed Trump. And he's still catching grief over it. So now it's Jimmy Fallon's turn, because Jimmy Fallon was too engaging with Trump. Jimmy Fallon was too nice. He was too accommodating. He didn't destroy Trump. He didn't laugh at Trump. He didn't make fun of Trump enough. And so they're talking about that on TMZ Live last night. Here's Harvey Levin's reaction.
An absurd criticism. To me, it's like the media, it's so weird to me, is that there is an expectation now that the media is automatically supposed to be an attack dog, depending on what your political leanings are, whichever side you're on. There's this expectation that if you don't attack, if you don't go for the jugular, you haven't done your job. Nobody's reporting the news anymore. Everybody's just attacking.
See?
And that's the weird thing about this election, is that I think the media has become more irrelevant this time around than they have in the history of television. I really believe that.
Now, what he means by irrelevant, he doesn't mean that they're not effective. He's talking about irrelevant and relevant within the context of what they used to do. They used to be, even though they did all the opining, they did all the bias, and they still informed people. There still was news. I mean, you turn into ABC, CBS, NBC, you would learn something you didn't know that had happened that day. That doesn't happen now. That's not what the news is, and that's what he's commenting on. The news is you got to go for the jugular of the person you don't want to be elected, in this case, Trump. And if you don't do that, if you're in the drive-bys, and you don't do that, your fellow drive-bys and establishment members are going to savage you. And it's starting to happen a little bit to Fallon. It is still happening to poor old Matt Lauer, who I am sure is in PTSD shell shock over this. These guys don't know what that kind of criticism. We get it every day and have for 27 years. It's part of being conservative in life and in America, but they don't know how to deal with it. They're totally unaccustomed to it. Professional criticism, personal criticism. And it is, in the case of Matt Lauer, it's vicious even still, and it's coming from the upper echelons of NBC. His only defender is Andy Lack, who's the news division president, who is actually, they say, the other guy on the side of the earpiece. But NBC is, no, nobody was feeding Matt questions. Yeah, they're leaving him out to dry. He came up with that device of demanding Hillary come clean on the emails on his own. But imagine his career in jeopardy because he dared pursue a line of inquiry in Hillary Clinton that is verboten. So Levin's right. No news. What he means by irrelevant, I think maybe he may be saying that if they were as relevant as they used to be, they would have taken Trump out by now. I mean, Trump is a target-rich environment. And if they had the power and the influence they used to have, they would have taken him out. Now, maybe so, but there's another aspect of that. Hillary Clinton is the alternative, and believe me, that's not an upper. Let me find the story here. Here it is. It's a piece by Mark Thiessen at the Washington Post, a column. It cites a poll. Recent NBC Wall Street Journal news poll found that just 11% of Americans say that Hillary Clinton is honest and trustworthy. Now, to put that in perspective, 14% of American voters believe in Bigfoot. So, more people believe in Bigfoot than people believe Hillary is honest. So you can say, yeah, they haven't succeeded in taking Trump out. Well, the problem is they don't understand why Trump's where he is. They don't understand why he's attractive. They're starting to, and they're getting worried about it. The alternative is Hillary, and nobody likes her either, and she certainly has no modicum of respect. And 11% think she's honest. How does Hillary have the polling numbers she's got if that happens to be true? Ponder that as we take an obscene profit break. Okay, so you see how Matt Lauer is being treated, and you see how they're starting now to dump on Jimmy Fallon. You think the moderators for the upcoming presidential debates notice this? You think they are sensing what happens to people who are honest and straightforward regarding Mrs. Clinton. There is news, by the way, about her and her emails, and it just will not go away. And it involves Reddit, of all places. A group of Redditors. Reddit is a blog / website for particularly focused people. And a group of people that spend time on this place, the Redditors, have convinced that they have found a smoking gun in the Clinton email saga. And if true, it means they have done at Reddit, it's Reddit for those of you unfamiliar. If this is true, they've done a much greater investigation job than the FBI did. What they believe they've discovered is posts from an IT specialist who was looking for advice on how to delete and remove content of very VIP emails. Apparently, somebody working IT for Hillary went to Reddit and asked Redditors if any of them knew how to do this. Do you know how to remove content from very VIP emails? This request was made on July 24th, 2014. You know what happened on July 24th, 2014? You know what happened the day before? On July 23rd, 2014, a congressional committee chaired by Trey Gowdy confirmed a deal to get Hillary Clinton's records and emails. And this is where the agreement was made that she would get all 60,000 of them, and she'll weed out the 30,000 that only had to do with yoga and her daughter's wedding and wedding reception and where they were registered for gifts and all that. And then she would keep those. And then she'd give the other 30,000 to the State Department to go through. After that is when somebody from her IT team, it is suspected, got hold of Reddit and said, is there anybody here who can tell me how to who in bulk, delete and remove content of very VIP emails? So the very day after the Gowdy Committee confirms it's going to get her records, a Hillary IT tech asks Reddit how to strip VIP email and address from archives, email addresses from the archives of what she's going to send. And this is considered to be a smoking gun. Guy Benson put these two dates together and tweeted it out. He's the political editor at townhall.com. So this isn't going to go away. This email, everybody thinks we've seen the end of it. Well, no. A lot of people on the left think we've seen the end of it, but this continues to be a drip, 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 drip. And as Hillary says, I've done everything. I've been as open, as honest as I can. I have not held back. I have. And then she faints or seizes up, and they revive her, and she continues the denial. And after every denial, a new bit of information drops that contradicts what she has most recently said about this. So it's continuing to be problematic, and the people, don't doubt me on this. You don't know who these people are. They're the people behind the closed doors, the cloakrooms, the deep, dark corridors of power. The Democrat National Committee, the Democrat Party, and maybe even elected officials that are public, Harry Reid, Chuck Schumer. They are really, really worried. This is not at all how this was supposed to have shaken out. Here's Jim in San Antonio. I want to grab a phone call, as I always try to do in the first hour. Jim in San Antonio, I'm glad you called, sir. Great to have you with us. What's up?
Rush, it's a pleasure to speak to you first off.
Thank you.
My thought, I've been listening to you for an awfully long time, and I hear people talk about, if the Democrats win, we're going to have to wait 4 years before we can do anything. My premise is that with Supreme Court nominees, with legalizing the illegals, with opening the borders and all that, my premise is that I do not think the conservatives can win another national election for the foreseeable future. We've got...
Well, Trump is saying that this may be the last election the Republican Party can win
I think
I know what he means. I know what he means. But who are these people that are saying we got 4 years? If we lose, we got 4 years to put it all back to who? Give me a name. Can you give me the type of people saying that?
Well, I mean, I listen to you. I listen to Beck. I listen to Hannity. But some of the no Trumpers right now. Some of our leaders in the GOP party and all that.
Yeah,
your McCain's, your all those people and everything. But and I think this will spill over even to some of the statewide elections. Midterm elections, we're going to have a chance, but I just do not think we're going to have a chance with the electoral vote situation and everything. I think it looks pretty bleak.
Oh, I think you're right. I don't. There is no for the people that are saying, hey, if we lose, we're going to really be setting ourselves up for a massive win in 4 years because after 4 more years of this, it's going to be so bad. And they're missing the boat entirely. This is it. In a lot of ways. Not that there's not going to be an America. There's always going to be an America. It's just what kind of America it's going to be and who is going to be leading it and what kind of character and morality and value system is going to be dominant. And that's what's at stake. And some of the never-Trumpers don't think there's any such crisis at all like that. This is a good transition for me to lead the next hour with excerpts from Victor Davis Hanson's piece that I talked about earlier at National Review. It'll dovetail exactly what you're talking about. We'll get to it right after this. Never, never Trump. Victor Davis Hanson, National Review online today. This could be the one. The definitive piece calling out and questioning the thinking of never-Trumpers on the right. Can't by any stretch read it all. I'll give you highlights, enough to tickle you so that you want to read the whole thing yourself. It may not be number 8. I may have to go to number, the Skittles. I can't believe this. The Skittles. The media. This is the most amazing thing. So we have this New Jersey bomber blow people up and wants to blow even more people up. We have the slasher in Minnesota. And, of course, the drive-bys are talking about maybe they're good people, maybe they just misunderstood. Maybe they really were discriminated against because they're Muslims, because America is so discriminating. America's an imperfect nation, and America really discriminates against minorities, and maybe they really were driven to this. And then the news trickles in and no, they weren't driven to it. They genuinely hate the country, and there's nothing nice about them. Their family, in case of the New Jersey guy, the guy's father tried to alert the FBI for 2 years about the guy. This is the second or third time, by the way, that I have heard the FBI was warned about somebody who a few months or years later then proceeded to blow something up. I can't remember the one prior to this, but this guy's doctor, the New Jersey guy, is saying, his dad saying, I tried to warn the FBI about my son for 2 years. So anyway, the drive-bys get all hopeful. They're really hopeful that these are good, decent Americans that were driven to this madness by American bigotry and racism. And then they slowly learn it isn't the case. And then Donald Trump Jr. comes out and makes some comment comparing him to Skittles, and they have a cow. They literally go berserk over a Skittles comment, which then causes a former FBI director, Jim Kallstrom, to say, when are we going to get serious about this? And he's echoing the Trump campaign, when are we going to get serious about this? It was just yesterday we learned that 800 people scheduled to be deported were granted citizenship. Did you hear about that, Rachel? 800 people who were supposed to be deported were granted citizenship because their fingerprints were not in an electronic file. And as Trump said, that's just stupid. If you don't want to assign any political purpose to it, and if you don't want to sit there and say, somebody did this on purpose, you don't want to go there, you don't have to. It's just plain stupid. And it's stupidity in a never-ending line of stupidity. And it seems like the tolerance for government stupidity knows no bounds. The tolerance for government inefficiency, for government stupidity, for government ineffectiveness knows no bounds whatsoever. Government can come in and make a mess of whatever, and the victims of the mess will then demand the government do something to fix it, which flies in the face of logic. You mean you want the people who broke it to fix it? And who knows why? Psychologically, faith and trust and hope in the government is something that you probably just can't talk people out of. They just have to experience it. Earlier today, Fox has this show that airs opposite my show. It's on noon. It's called Outnumbered. And they have 4 of their female anchors and infobibs there, and there's one guy who's the guest. And he is the outnumbered. And the hashtag on Twitter for that guy is one lucky guy. Because he's sitting there with 4 Fox babes. Today it was John Bolton, who was the one lucky guy outnumbered by the 4 Fox females. And they had a discussion about the interview that we did with Mike Pence yesterday right here on the EIB network. During that interview with Pence referenced the fact that the White House press secretary, Josh Earnest, said that the United States is in a narrative fight with ISIS. Now, folks, look, I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. This is one of the reasons why you know there aren't very many guests in this program. And over the course of the years, I've explained to you why. It's primarily career and professional and business reasons. There are others, but those are primarily one of the biggest reasons. I have to ask people questions that I already know the answers to. So why am I having a guest here if I already know the answer to the question I'm asking? Well, when the vice presidential nominee, when the campaign says, we've got 10 minutes, can you squeeze us in? Sure. When the vice president or the president, Cheney or Bush, call, can you squeeze? Yeah, obviously. But this is why I don't do guests, is because I don't want to offend anybody here, but I generally know the answer to every question I'm asking, which makes me sit here and say, why am I asking this question? I already know the answer. So why do I have to pretend I don't? Well, that's what happened here. Pence started talking about Ernest's comment about the fact that we're in a narrative fight with ISIS. So I said to Pence, what is that? What is that? Even though I know what it is, but I had to ask the question because Pence was here to explain it. So they played that soundbite and they had Bolton respond to it. So here's the first half. What happened to soundbite 33?
I'm not sure that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama know that we're at war. The White House spokesman today actually said that we were in a, quote, narrative fight, in a narrative battle.
What is that? What is that?
I don't even know what that is. I be honest with you, I was just mystified by it. You know, I really don't understand what a narrative fight or a narrative battle is. I mean, we need new leadership in this country that will name our enemy.
I know what a narrative fight is. I knew what Ernest meant. These are a bunch of academic theoreticians in the White House. You know, ISIS to them is they're playing chess or they're playing Risk or Monopoly, whatever. And these are just pieces on the board, and they assign, they construct these academic, very deep intellectual exercises to explain what these barbarians are doing, and they discuss it in terms of buzz and PR. Okay, so ISIS is out there doing what they're doing, but they've got a narrative associated with it that they're good people, that they're helping out, that they're righting wrongs, and so we have to have a counter narrative that they're the bad guys, we're the good guys, and so everything is looked at in a narrative battle. Who can win the media coverage? And, of course, that's irrelevant. We're not looking at winning media coverage. We're looking at winning a very real war against these people. But the Obama administration is not focused on that at all. So when Ernest goes out there and I think drops the ball and admits they're in a narrative fight, He's admitting the way they look at this, that ISIS is just one of the many issues in the world that we have to deal with here, and we're in a battle with them over who can win the hearts and minds of people. In other words, they're legitimate. We're going to legitimize them by acknowledging they have a narrative, and we are trying to out-narrative their narrative. We're trying to trump their... Well, they wouldn't say that, but... So that's how I would have explained if somebody asked me, what is this narrative battle? Now, here's Bolton. Sandra Smith, one of the Fox info babes, starts the bite by talking to Bolton about what this all means.
You heard the voice of Rush Limbaugh challenging that notion of a war of narratives. Is this a misguided White House, Ambassador?
It's a dream world. Look, academics call this semiotics. It's the science of signals and symbols, and that's what they do at the White House. They maneuver words around and talk in narratives. You know what ISIS does for semiotic warfare? They cut people's heads off. And you know what they respect? They respect force, which they're seeing in inadequate amounts from the United States at this point. So we can either have a real war against terrorism and try and defeat these barbarians, or we can engage in more semiotics.
And again, semiotics is just a war of handlers and PR and buzz. Who can create the winning narrative? And for who? Well, in terms of the regime, they would like to create a narrative that has everybody in the media agreeing that we're beating ISIS. So what did Obama say at the UN today? Essentially that. And the world's never been safer. America's never been safer and better. We're beating these people back. In the midst of all these attacks, that's what they do. No, it's Wag the Dog. Remember the movie Wag the Dog? Do you see that, Rachel? It's exactly what this is. Wag the Dog. There was no war. And yet the news coverage was of a war every day that the people provided phony footage of. It captivated. It was a movie, but it demonstrated what a war of narratives actually is. But the takeaway from it, the bottom line is that Bolton is saying here is that the regime's not even taking this ISIS thing seriously for what it is. The way they look at ISIS is a challenge to the legacy of Obama. And so what can they do to limit the success of ISIS up and against Obama's legacy, his reputation? And, of course, taking them out and destroying them with real substantive military tactics. No. We've got to come up with a better narrative. And this is, gee, folks, it's another way of expressing the total frustration of what we've had here. We don't have people from the real world anywhere in the Obama cabinet. We got theoreticians, we have academicians, we've got people hung around a faculty lounge their entire lives. There's not a single Obama cabinet member that's ever run a business. There's not a single Obama cabinet member who's ever had to meet a payroll or anything associated with it. They have no way to really relate to it. Their view of the economy is it's just a never-ending fat golden goose. It's laying eggs all the time, and all these people got to go pick them up, many of them as they can get, and bring it under government control. So it's the narcissism and the quest for power and the way these people seek to create legacies and historical references about themselves without taking any real action on anything. There isn't much in this country getting better. When you get right down to it, it's like every economy, every economic period, there's always going to be somebody doing well. The hope is that a lot of people are. But we don't have an economy like that. There are certain people doing well, and most of the people doing well are those who have crony relationships with the Obama administration, where it doesn't matter if they make or lose money in their businesses because they're propped up and protected. It isn't real. But there isn't a whole lot good happening in our economy. There isn't economic growth. There is not massive job creation. We're nowhere near replacing the jobs were lost in the recession in 2008. And yet, in the war of narratives, How do you think Obama's at 54% approval? Despite failure after failure after failure. The American people don't know the failures. They may be living the failures. They may be having trouble getting a job. They may be troubled retiring the student loan debt of their kids. But they turn on the news and they say, this is really good. Everything's cool out there for Obama. Obama's doing great. Obama's doing fine. Everybody likes Obama. If there's any problem out there, it's the Republicans and people criticizing Obama who just don't want Obama to do well. That's what your millennial population believes. That's what this narrative business is all about. Okay, look, I because of that, I didn't get to the VDH piece. So let me take a break. We'll come back and take a couple phone calls, and then we'll move and get to the VDH piece starting at the bottom of the hour. Don't go away here, folks. Donald Trump is in High Point, North Carolina, and is apparently lighting it up with what was described to me as a stem winder. We've lost our feed here because of cloud cover. We have this time of year is horrible for thunderstorms and hurricanes and tornadoes and hailstorms and sandstorms and snowstorms. September is the rainiest, cloudiest month here. I happen to like it. But we've lost our feed here about 10 minutes ago. So I have to take it on source authority that Trump is really lighting it up in High Point, North Carolina. So we'll go back to the phones first, as I promised, to Coronado, California. Hey, Bob, great to have you here, sir. Hello.
Hi, Rush. I just wanted to expand on the point that you've been making that we need to be very skeptical and believing anything we hear. I would just remind people that we're in a window 6 to 8 weeks in front of an election. And if we go back 4 years, on September 16th, Susan Rice went in front of the Sunday shows and told one of the biggest lies. Obama then came out on the 25th of September 2012, again, 5 weeks before an election, and said that there's no video that justifies an attack on an embassy. Harry Reid was making up the story about Romney not paying his taxes, apparently he's even speaking on the Senate floor today, saying that Trump doesn't really have all this money that he claims, and that's why he's not releasing his taxes.
Right.
And I'd even add one more. Hillary's team that released the birther issue in March of 2012. That was right in the thick of the Super Tuesday primaries, literally weeks before the end of the primaries. So this is a very desperate time for them, and I think you're very correct. We should be very cognizant of everything that's said and probably be a skeptic, and it may just be a blatant lie, and then they'll deal with it later. Harry Reid will apologize, or he won't apologize. He'll laugh and say, "Well, we won, didn't we?" I think that's that's not what'll happen.
No. What'll happen is Harry Reid says what he said. The media will go to Trump. Is Harry Reid right? You really not have all this money? That's what they did to Romney. Harry Reid said, "I got a friend who says Romney hadn't paid his taxes in 10 years." Well, who's your friend? And Reid said, "Screw my friend. You need to go ask Romney if it's true. What? You need to go ask Romney why he hasn't paid." And that's what the media did. They didn't demand any proof whatsoever from Dingy Harry. So Dingy Harry's out there now saying Trump doesn't have all this money. That's why he won't release his tax returns. You need to follow that up. Media, they don't even need to be told on this. They'll just go do it. But you're right. It was March 2008 when Sidney Blumenthal and the Hillary camp got the birther movement against Obama going. He's responding to this idea that Kathleen Kennedy Townsend was told by George Bush 41 that he's voting for Hillary at a Points of Light gathering at the president's home in Maine last night. Nobody heard Bush say this. So nobody really knows. And the Bush team, they're not going to deny it or confirm it because they've already stated that they're not going to announce how Bush is going to vote. Now, people assume, well, if he's not going to announce it, that means he's not supporting the nominee. Not necessarily. But the larger point here is, and it always boils down to this, you realize what the media was able to do. You had McCain. We might disagree with McCain on a host of issues, but he's not a reprobate. He's not a bad guy. And they turned him into one that people believed. Mitt Romney is as squeaky clean as one of the squeegees that Rudy Giuliani got off the streets of Manhattan back in the 1990s or early 2000s. Squeaky clean. And they turned Romney into a guy who didn't care about dogs because he put it on the roof of a station wagon, a family vacation, that he didn't care about the wives of employees, even when they died of cancer, and that he routinely participated in mean hazing stunts at prep school. Now, it took them a long time, but they were able to convince a majority of Americans that these two men, who were so squeaky clean they were boring, turned them into the two of the biggest villains in American politics. Now, they're having trouble doing this with Trump. They have been trying for months. They're not going to stop trying. They're going to continue to ratchet it up. And but they don't know what they're dealing with in Trump because it isn't working. It's not diminishing Trump. The first time they've tried this, that it isn't working. And hey, stick with me, folks. This is really tough to excerpt. I tell you up front because it deserves to be read in its entirety. And I simply don't have the time or the ability to do it. It's tough, interpretive reading of others' words. I mean, there's probably nobody better at it than me. I could probably command your attention if I wanted to read the whole thing. But that would not be the best way to approach this. Excerpts and you following it yourself. It's Never Trump. Victor Davis Hanson, the phenomenal VDH, writing at National Review Online, which is interesting in and of itself because National Review has many of the Never Trumpers who are trumpeting their Never Trumpism every day, multi-times a day on the National Review site. And Victor Davis Hanson is not naming any names, doesn't have to, but the people who would read his piece would know who he's talking about. But let me do my best to excerpt this. It begins thus. Any Republican has a difficult pathway to the presidency. On the electoral map, expanding blue blobs in coastal and big city America swamp the conservative geographical sea of red. Have you ever seen that map? Red and blue counties? We dwarf them. But we don't dwarf them in the population centers. But 98% of this country geographically is Republican. You go to the coastal areas and some state capitals like Chicago and other big cities, and it's all Union Democrat. California, for example. Big electoral vote states, California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, are utterly lost to the Republican presidential candidate before the campaign even starts. The media have devolved into a weird ministry of truth. News seems defined now as what information is necessary to arrive at correct views. That's exactly right. Ministry of truth. State-controlled media. News isn't news anymore. News is what they do in order to move you to arrive to agree with the correct opinion of things. Story after story, person after person. In recent elections, centrists like McCain and Romney were reinvented as caricatures of Potterville scoundrels right out of a Frank Capra movie, such as It's a Wonderful Night. When the media got through with a good guy like McCain, he was left an adulterous, confused septuagenarian, unsure of how many mansions he owned, and a likely closeted bigot. Another gentleman like Romney was reduced to a comic book Richie Rich, who owned an elevator, never talked to his garbage man, hazed innocent guys in prep school, and tortured his dog on the roof of his station wagon. If it were a choice between shouting down debate moderator Candy Crowley and shaming her unprofessionalism or allowing her to hijack the debate, Romney chose the decorous path of dignified abdication. What this means is these these mild-mannered, moderate, centrist Republicans, when they are being systematically cut up and destroyed right in front of their faces, sit back and let it happen because it's the polite and establishment way to do it. You simply do not fight back. You simply do not. Candy Crowley asserts herself in that debate and saves and rescues Obama on the whole subject of Benghazi and foreign policy, and Romney sits there and lets it happen. And Mr. Hansen here is saying, these are the people we think we can beat these people. These are the people we think we'd rather have than Donald Trump. These are the people that we think are going to fight back against what's wrong. We already know Romney didn't fight back. We already know McCain didn't fight back. And even if they had chosen to, they were destroyed before they would have started. This is part of a slow buildup to his belief that Trump is the last hope that we have of stopping the path that we are on, that Victor Davis Hanson concludes is national suicide. And along the way, he excoriates these never-Trumpers for their focus on the preservation of this movement or that movement, or delaying the inevitable for 4 more years. Maybe we can get it back in 4 years, but we can't ever do anything if this guy we will ruin our party. We will ruin conservatism if Trump wins. This is what they say. And Mr. Hansen here says, if Trump loses, you aren't going to have anything. There isn't going to be a conservative movement, and there isn't going to be a Republican Party. Now, there will be a conservative movement, but it's not going to have any political oomph. It's going to be made up of the same figures that make it up now that can't even win a Republican primary. But he takes 10 pages to get there. And it's the final 2/3 of his piece where he really lays in to what is going on. Here's a section called "Never in My Name?" ? The only missing tessera in Trump's mosaic is the Republican establishment, or rather, the 10% or so of them whose opposition might resonate enough to cost Trump 1 to 2% in 1 or 2 key states and spell his defeat. Some never-Trump critics would prefer a Trump electoral disaster that still could redeem their warnings that he would destroy the Republican Party. Barring that, increasingly many would at least settle to be disliked but controversial spoilers in a 1 to 2% loss to Hillary rather than irrelevant in a Trump win. Let me translate this and take some of this out of context. He's really chastising these people. He's saying these are the guys, the never-Trumpers, that long ago forecast Trump couldn't win diddly squat and predicted Trump wouldn't win the primary. And if he did win the primary, he couldn't beat Hillary, could get shellacked by 70%, 30%, 40%. It was going to be just a disaster. And Mr. Hansen's saying now that their real concern is not being shown to be wrong. For the sake of their reputations, they want Trump to lose big so that they can say they were right. And a Trump landslide defeat is exactly what they want in that case. But what happens if Trump loses by just a point or two? Well, that's okay as well. They would settle for being disliked, because if he loses by a point or two, it could be said that it's their fault, the never-Trumpers. But Victor Davis Hanson concludes that they would still rather Trump lose than have Trump win and themselves become irrelevant. Meaning, if Trump wins after all this never-Trumper opposition, is Trump going to offer them anything in his regime? Is Trump going to offer them anything? They're going to be left out. They don't want to be left out. So Trump has to lose, Mr. Hansen theorizes, for the never-Trumpers to have a future. And notice It's not Trump has to lose so the country has a future. The proper question... Oh, let me read the preceding paragraph to this. To be fair, Never Trump's logic is that Trump's past indiscretions and his lack of ethics, his opportunistic populism rather than his conservative message, and the Sarah Palin nature of some of his supporters, i.e., Hillary calls them deplorables, and Colin Powell huffed as the poor white folks, make him either too reckless to be commander-in-chief or too liberal to be endorsed by conservatives or too gauche to admit supporting him in reasoned circles. So again, I will explain this. He's acknowledging that the Never-Trumpers have a logic, and the logic is that Trump's past, his bombast, his indiscretions, his apparent lack of ethics, his populism, not conservative, he's not a conservative, his populism, and the deliverance characteristics of his supporters. Mr. Hansen saying it's not just Democrats that think Trump supporters are a bunch of hayseed hillbillies. It's the same Republicans who didn't like Sarah Palin. It's the same that Colin Powell calls them poor white folks. And because Trump has those kinds of people supporting him, it just can't be trusted. It'd be too reckless to be commander-in-chief. And this is so bad. These kinds of people supporting Trump, we can't join them. That's what he's saying here. The Never-Trumpers are looking at the people at Trump rallies and people to support Trump, and they see a bunch of deliverance hayseeds, and they're embarrassed. They can't acknowledge being for Trump and being in the same group with that crowd. You know what? There's an analogy. The establishment pro-choice Republicans who hate the Christian right, always have, are embarrassed to be at the Republican convention with them. They always have. You know, here comes Falwell's Moral Majority and these other family rights groups, and the Republican establishment, the moderate Republicans have always gone, ew, I just wish they weren't in my party. And Mr. Hansen's saying there's a strain of that among today's Never-Trumpers. They just can't imagine being in the same group of people that they see at a Trump rally. And then he says, perhaps, but the proper question is compared to what? Never-Trumpers assume that the latest insincerely packaged Trump is less conservative than the latest incarnation of an insincere Clinton on matters of border enforcement, military spending, tax and regulation reform, abortion, school choice, and cabinet and Supreme Court nominations. And Mr. Hansen says that is simply not a sustainable proposition. You cannot say that Trump is less conservative than Hillary. And he is aghast that there are Never-Trumpers on the right who are trying to claim Trump's disqualified because he's not conservative enough. When compared to Hillary Clinton, he is, which is the point I tried to make last week and apparently got savaged for it. Conservatism isn't, as we know it, on the ballot this time. So what do we do? Well, we have to start making comparisons. So we know that Hillary isn't, and we know that Trump is much closer to it than Hillary will ever be because she will never be it. And Trump, when it comes to his policy statements on border enforcement, military spending, tax and regulation reform, abortion, school choice, Supreme Court, compared to Hillary, there isn't any comparison. So why are the Never-Trumpers still insisting that Trump's not conservative enough for him? When the question is, compared to what? Yeah, maybe Trump versus Cruz. Yeah, Trump's not. Maybe Trump versus Rubio. Trump versus, well, I don't know, Huckabee. Pick a name out of the group that lost in the primary. But Trump versus Hillary? What are we talking about here? Anyway, there's more of this. I have to take an a little profit break here, folks. There's another very, very interesting paragraph. Now remember, the never-Trumpers, they can't stomach Trump because he's so odious, he's so uncouth, he's so unsophisticated, he's so intemperate, he's so ill-tempered, he's so rude, he just speaks like an uneducated dimwat. So Mr. Hansen writes, is Trump all that much more odious than the present incumbent? Barack Obama, who has insulted the Special Olympics, who has racially stereotyped at will, who has resorted to braggadocio laced with violent rhetoric, who has racially hyped ongoing criminal trials, Barack Obama, who has serially lied about Obamacare in Benghazi, Barack Obama, who ridiculed the grandmother who scrimped to send him to a private prep school, the Barack Obama who oversaw government corruption from the IRS to the VA to the GSA, the Barack Obama who has grown the national debt in a fashion never before envisioned. Yeah, Trump on occasion didn't recognize the nuclear triad, but then Trump probably doesn't say corpseman either, or believe we added 57 states. So this paragraph is sort of another little stick of dynamite to the never-Trumpers. Okay, so you guys think Obama's Mr. Sophisticated? You think Obama's the gold standard? Yeah, he went to Harvard, Ivy League, properly spoken, very intelligent sounding, he's a lying, conniving, dividing, unproductive, and just go through all the things that Obama said or done. How in the world? The question is, can you never-Trumpers look at Trump and see this big blob of unsophistication and boorishness, and look at Obama and not be similarly appalled? And that is the question, folks. You know, in all of this, the acceptance of all of these negatives and problems of Barack Obama because he's one of us. He's an establishment guy. He's got his Ivy League pedigree. He went to Harvard. He represents himself well when he speaks. He sounds intelligent. But look at what he's done. Does that not matter? So Mr. Hansen is wondering, how in the world can a guy like Obama, who has really demonstrated that he knows how to destroy things and divide people and split this nation wide open and promote the division and promote the hatred, how does a guy like Obama get a pass? And Donald Trump is held up to some standard that nobody could meet. Now, he has his answers to his questions. If you read the whole piece, you'll find out why he thinks the never-Trumpers are doing this. Essentially, it's self-preservation and fundraising and a number of other things. But in the process, he says, if this goes on, if there's 4 more years of this with Hillary and everything that she's going to bring along with it, we are committing national suicide. We are killing that America that was founded and that we have all grown up expecting to exist in perpetuity. The fastest 3 hours in media. Proof of that, already 2 are gone, and I'm getting emails saying, your program goes by too fast. You're not on long enough. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I am. Yes, I am. There is more coming up. Views expressed by the host on this program are riveting the nation and have done so for 28 years. And that's because the views expressed by the host on this program are documented to be almost always right, 99.8% of the time, and are always fascinating and interesting and compelling, and you can't turn it off once you turn it on. You might even be trying to right now. You just can't do it. Happy to have you with us. Rachel's in there rolling her eyes. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program, and the email address lrushmore@eibnet.com. Okay, folks, just one more thing from the Victor Davis Hanson piece, and I'm going to leave the rest of it up to you to find and read on your own. Again, it is yet another piece, maybe the one, the definitive piece, aimed at never-Trumpers, asking them, do you really know what you're doing here? This segment of the piece is entitled An Overdue Reckoning, and it deals with the people who are out there on the never-Trump side criticizing Trump because he's not conservative. He's not conservative enough, not a real conservative. He's going to destroy the conservative movement. If we vote for this guy, if we support this guy, we're throwing the conservative movement overboard. If we support Trump, we're essentially saying that everything we believed in for the last 30, 50 years has meant nothing if we're willing to invest in this guy. And there's a lot of never-Trumpers that think that they would deal conservatism a mortal blow if they were to compromise their beliefs and support Trump. And in a certain set of circumstances, yeah, there'd be no doubt that that is true. But in this set of circumstances, where conservatism is not the most important thing at stake, watch me get savaged for that. But to a lot of people, conservatism is the most important thing at stake. It is the only thing at stake here. That and maybe the Republican Party. And look, I understand those people who think that way. If it's their livelihood, if it's their living, if it's their future, yeah, I get it. But Mr. Hansen's argument here is that it's not the most important thing going on at the moment. Conservatism, conservative movement. But more than that, the very people out there, that's what this next segment's about, the very people in the never-Trump crowd who are calling Trump out for not being conservative may not be all that conservative themselves. To wit, the old Wall Street Journal adherence to open borders, that's not so conservative. At least not for those on the front lines of illegal immigration and without the means to navigate around the concrete ramifications of the open borders ideologies of apartheid elites. Again, let me translate. So we all know here the Wall Street Journal editorial page has been open borders forever because the Chamber of Commerce buys a lot of spots. And even if that didn't happen, the Wall Street Journal editorial board is on the same page as the Chamber of Commerce. And whatever big business wants, the Journal is going to be in favor of. The Journal's their Bible. And big business wants open borders. Here comes the Journal, ostensibly a conservative place. If you want to find out what conservative finance and economic news is, you read the Wall Street Journal editorial page. Mr. Hansen is saying, really? I mean, these guys, there's nothing conservative about their immigration position. They're for open borders. And that's not conservative for all of those people who are not in the elites, who are not in the establishment. Those people are out there on the front lines of illegal immigration and do not have the means or the resources, the money to navigate around the very real ramifications of what open borders means to communities. Hey, the Wall Street Journal can afford to throw their conservatism on this aside because they're not going to live with the results of open borders. How conservative was a definition of free trade that energized European Union subsidies on agriculture, tariffs on American imports into Japan, Chinese cheating or peddling toxic products, or general dumping into the United States? For 2 decades, farmers and small businesses have been wiped out in rural America. That destruction may have been creative, but it certainly was not because the farmers and business owners were stupid or lazy or uncompetitive. By this late date, for millions, wild and often unpredictable populist venting became preferable to being sent to the library to be enlightened by Adam Smith or Edmund Burke, meaning real events in real people's lives brought about by so-called conservatives who believed in free trade and open borders is decimating the communities where these people live. There isn't anything conservative about it, and there isn't anything positive about it from their standpoint, and they're told that supporting Trump, who wants to try to protect them, who claims that he's going to stop all of these things ruining their lives, for the never-Trumpers to come around and say, he's destroying conservatism, they'd better realize it's gone beyond conservatism now. It's not a debate over who's conservative and who isn't, and who thus deserves to receive a vote and who doesn't. Outsourcing and offshoring did not make the U.S. more competitive, at least for most Americans outside of Wall Street and Silicon Valley. Boutique, this is a great line coming up here. Boutique corporate multiculturalism was always driven by profits while undermining the rare American idea of e pluribus unum assimilation. As the canny multimillionaires Colin Kaepernick and Beyonce have grasped. Boutique corporate multiculturalism was always driven by profits, meaning you can also include boutique corporate climate change support. How many, you go to the grocery store, how many products you see and have got some relationship to green this, green that, organic here, organic there? And his point is these people aren't really into all that ideologically. They just think you are, and they're trying to separate you from your money. So they're going boutique climate change, boutique multicultural to make you think they are hip and up with it when all they want is your money for their profits, which nothing wrong with that. That's what businesses are out there to do. But these people can get away. They get away with throwing away their conservatism. They get away with abandoning their conservatism. And they're not called out on it. They're called good citizens. They're called interested in social justice and all that. His point is, who are all these conservatives claiming Trump isn't one? Are they really? Long ago, an Ivy League brand ceased being synonymous with erudition or ethics, as Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama have demonstrated. Defeated or retired conservative Republican grandees were just as likely as their liberal counterparts to profit from their government service in Washington to rake in lobbyist cash. So hoi polloi were about ready for anything, or rather everything. Meaning, so you got all these people shouting out that they're conservatives, and we'd rather have this erudite Ivy Leaguers who make us proud because they don't sound like cowboys or hayseed hicks. But you're trying to tell me that Bill Clinton is erudite, that Hillary Clinton is sophisticated and erudite, and Obama, and then all these people, Republican or Democrat, are scoring big personal paydays off of their government service. And they're excoriating Trump for being insincere, disingenuous, and not conservative. In sum, writes Mr. Hanson, if Donald Trump's bulldozer blade didn't exist, it would have to be invented. Donald Trump is Obama's nemesis. He is Hillary's worst nightmare. Donald Trump is a vampire's mirror to the Republican establishment. Before November's election, Trump's next outburst or reinvention will once again sorely embarrass his supporters, but perhaps not to the degree that Clinton's erudite callousness should repel her own. It may be discomforting for some conservatives to vote for the Republican Party's duly nominated candidate. But as this Manichean two-person race ends, it's now becoming suicidal not to, and that's how it concludes. So, didn't read the whole thing, but it's Victor Davis Hanson at National Review Online, just to give you a flavor. Now, I mentioned earlier that I had been told by spies on the scene that Trump was delivering a stem winder in High Point, North Carolina, but at the time we had lost our satellite feed here because of the dense overcast producing torrential rain and lightning. We have a couple audio sound bites, though, just to give you a flavor for it. So I think we have, this is a huge crowd for High Point, it's like 2,000 or 3,000 people. It's a sold-out venue, wherever it is. And we've got two bites, And I have not heard these myself, so we'll be listening to them together.
I will fight to bring us together as one American people. Imagine what our country could accomplish if we started working together as one people under one God, saluting one flag.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh.
It's time to break with the bitter failures of the past and to embrace a new, inclusive prosperity and the American future, because that's what it's going to be. New factories are going to come rushing in. They're going to come rushing in. We will incentivize people to stay, and they will be decentivized if they leave our country. They're not going to just come out, fire all our people, build product outside of the country, and sell it into our country so easily. It's going to be a whole different ballgame.
And here's the next bite.
Once more, we will have a government of, by, and for the people. We will make America wealthy again and save your Social Security, which you people are a long ways away. We will make America strong again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. God bless you. God bless you, and thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we edited the applause there, but that I wouldn't call that a stem winder. It's not a criticism. I just have a specific definition of stem winder. And that's not a stem winder. That's kind of dialed back and reserved there. At least our excerpts of it were. But that you heard me say uh-oh when he said good thing what we can accomplish working together as one people under one God. Can you imagine? Climate change crowd's going to go berserk on that one alone. And saluting one flag. Speaking of which, I'm glad I remember. Do you hear what Jerry Jones said, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys? My players are going to stand for the national anthem. My players are going to stand. And I was interested to look at the reaction to this. He owns the damn football team. The people that work for him are his employees, and he can tell them that they are going to stand for the national anthem. And I've heard all of these coaches and some others in the NFL who want no part of this when it's reported to them that some of their players are not going to stand, or that they're going to raise their fists, a la John Carlos and Tommy Smith at the Olympics in Mexico in 1968. And these coaches, well, I can't tell these guys what to do. First Amendment, free speech. What do you mean you can't tell them? You tell them this league suspends players left and right for doing things that they're not allowed to do. These teams suspend players for things they're not allowed to do all the time. They demand that they be in bed at a certain time during training camp and on the road. They have all kinds of things they demand that they do. But when it comes to the national anthem, apparently, no, we can't tell these guys. But Jerry Jones said, my guys are standing. So that's considered a throwback now, by the way. Oh, he shouldn't be. That's that kind of authoritarian. That millennials will not appreciate that. Well, it's time they learned. Dennis, Torrance, California, quickly squeeze a call in while we have time. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Rush?
Very good. Appreciate your call.
Thank you. Hearkening back to the previous hour, so
yes.
Bear with me a little on this, because it may sound a little far-fetched, but when you consider who we're dealing with on the left, I'm not so sure. We already know Obama hasn't even acknowledged we're in a real war with Islamic terrorists. He won't even acknowledge terrorists or Islamists. But who has the administration been in a narrative battle with from the get-go? Us, you, me, everyone on the right.
Oh, absolutely.
Pardon me?
Absolutely. I've said long that we are the biggest enemy they think they've got.
That plays right into my point. Could Josh Earnest possibly be engaging in little code speak? Maybe that's directed at us, what he's saying.
What would be the code?
Well, he's saying they're in a narrative battle. Who are they really in a narrative battle with? Like they won't even acknowledge they're in an actual war with Islamic terrorists. It's absurd to say they're in a narrative battle with them.
Well, but see, that's the point. It's not. That's exactly the way Obama wants ISIS. Obama doesn't want to see ISIS as a battlefield opponent, as a at war opponent. Obama is not for his legacy. His legacy doesn't depend on defeating ISIS in the battlefield. His legacy depends on the media and historians writing how he dealt with ISIS and rendered them irrelevant and all of that. And that is resulting from creating a narrative that he has done that. And he needs the support of the media to do it. He doesn't want to defeat them on the battlefield. Doesn't want to go that far. I think Bolton was right. They do construct these various ways of that's why he won't pronounce them as an enemy. He won't call it Islamic terrorism, like you point out. I got to run. Quick time out, folks. So back in just a second here. I'm going to tell you what I think is actually going on with Obama and ISIS. This whole narrative business, folks, I've studied this. To the naked eye, and to those of us who see the world the way we do and consider militant Islamic supremacism to be of enemy status and Sharia to be incompatible with the U.S. Constitution, we see an enemy that is attempting to conquer us, and we see an enemy that needs to be stopped. And I don't believe Obama sees it that way at all. And I think it's patently obvious. Once you have the brush cleared away and can clearly see and understand, like when Ernest comes out, talks about, we're in a narrative battle here. And when Obama won't call them what they are, he will not even use the word terrorism, and this insistence that there is no terrorism in Islam, it's a religion of peace. I really think deep down that Obama sees Islam as the next civil rights movement. He sees Islam as a gigantic yet minority movement because there are so many powerful forces, even though they're smaller, arrayed against them. And I think Obama wants his legacy to be how he stood against the tide of anti-Muslim sentiment, against the backlash. He wants to be seen as having ushered in a new era of Muslim acceptance in our society and around the globe. If Obama were president in World War II, the equivalent would be talking about how wonderful the Japanese are and how wrong it is for us to be suspicious of, before Pearl Harbor, how wrong it is for us to be suspicious of them. And that they have reasons. If they don't trust us and if they're angry, they have reasons. We have stepped. I think that's his view of Islam. That's right, a man, a legend, a way of life. St. George, Utah says, Kelly, great to have you. I'm glad you waited. Hi.
Hi, Rush. The amount of time that conservatives spend complaining about the media bias is such a waste of time. We need to accept it. We need to get in it and change it like you have done. Fox News, blogosphere, we need to become part of the media machine. You know, conservatives by design are polite. We don't want to offend. But we need to be vocal. We need to speak up with humor like you and like Greg Gutfeld. Your thoughts?
My thought, well, I'm just a little confused because you say that we need to get to be part of the media like I've done, like Fox News. Who isn't doing what exactly? Who are the people you're talking about haven't done it and need to?
Well, we're just so quietly, busy. We're working. We complain about the media, how biased it is. We have got to speak up, be more vocal in our local situations. We've got to become part of the media. We need to speak out. We need to be smart and funny like you. And instead of complain about it, we've got to become part of it.
Okay. I know what you mean. You've got a two-prong bit of analysis going here. On one hand, you're saying all of this cataloging and commenting on media bias, we're way past that. Everybody knows that. Conservatives have been doing that, and basically all that accomplishes is us whining about how unfair things are. Instead of doing that, we just need to forget what they're saying about us and just go be who we are everywhere, right?
Absolutely. And Rush, you can never retire. What will we do? If you do, and I understand, your efforts, you've got to turn it over to somebody funny, Mark Stein, somebody like me. You've got to take care of us after you're gone. You can't just leave us high and dry. You're too big a part of what's happening. You've got to supersede the media. The politicians have got to supersede the media. You've got to speak to the people and override them because they're a negative, horrible force in our country. Yeah,
it becomes increasing. And by the way, thank you. I think you overblow it there a little bit, but I appreciate your thoughts very much. The whole concept of media, it's an adversary. The media is another adversarial force. I've regaled people with these stories I don't know how many times over the years, but we still have way too many people that are totally, even though they think they're not, totally dependent on what the media says before they'll form an opinion of their own. People on our side. And it's frustrating in one sense. It's understandable in another. I think the big disconnect is we call them the media, and it's funny to me now to read. The media is written about by other members of the media. It's not a news gathering operation or business, but rather as an opposition force to Republicans and conservatism, and as a support group for Democrats and liberals. It's openly written about this way. The media is written about as a built-in obstacle. The media is written about as a political entity, not as a bunch of people in the business of gathering information and reporting it to people that didn't know it, which is, the Journalism 101 textbook definition. Well, that's long out the door. That hasn't been in practice in I don't know how long. But yet I think we still have a lot of people who treat the media as a giant blob that can be shaped and molded to befriend us or to reflect our point of view if we massage them, if we hang out with them, if we feed them, if we give them leaks and so forth. I think there's a lot of people on our side who think they're part of it, only in the conservative branch or the conservative wing of the media, because all of media that you're talking about fits right in with the ruling class establishment. They are every bit the members of the establishment that the elected officials and the CEOs and all the other cronyists are. And yet they are looked at erroneously, mistakenly by some people as not being that. And so the approach to them, I mean, if you are going to focus, if what you like to do is to chronically inform people about media bias, then you must occupy a position in which you believe that can change. Otherwise, why tell people about it? Well, there is another reason. You tell people about it so they can learn to identify it on their own and not be so affected by it. But in the process of chronicling media bias for people and telling them, your friends and so forth, and telling them how to spot it and so forth, you're almost acknowledging the fact that they can be better or they can be improved or whatever. And I think they're just not seeing the proper way now by enough people on our side. It's not about news gathering. It's not about information gathering. It's not about reporting anything. It is, as Mr. Hansen said in his piece right here, the media have devolved into a weird ministry of truth. News, the news, seems to be defined now as that information necessary for people to arrive at correct views or opinions. So, you take an issue like ISIS. The media is ministry of truth. That means they are state-controlled. They work with Democrat governments, Democrat administrations, and their purpose is to pass on information in such a way that everybody who hears it will agree with the administration view of ISIS. And if you don't, you are a reactionary or some other name. You're unstable. You're an extremist. If you reject the accepted definition, explanation of anything, a campaign, a candidate, a military unit, an enemy, another religion, if you accept the approved definitions and therefore subscribe to the correct view and opinion of it, you're cool, you're fine. If you don't, then the name calling starts. You're reactionary, you're extremist, you're racist, you're sexist, you're bigot, what have you. And there's too many on our side who still seem convinced that they can make the media respect them, that they can cause the media to like them, that they can, if they work it right, make the media treat them fairly and properly and so forth, thereby admitting that they fail to see what the media's existence really is, at least for us, which is just another obstacle. The media is part of the Democrat Party. The media is part of any Democrat administration. And the idea that it can be changed, the idea that they can be persuaded to abandon the administration, be critical of them, that's fallacious. It can't happen. And it won't happen. So they have to be defeated just like you would defeat Hillary. You're running against Hillary and the media. Anyway, I appreciate the call much. I've got to take another brief time out, my friends. We'll be back here in just a sec. Here's Julia in my adopted hometown of Sacramento, California. How are you doing, Julia?
Great, Russ. How are you?
Fine, dandy. Thank you, El Mucho.
I just wanted to mention the first part where you were speaking about George Bush Sr. I can't even believe that a Republican would even consider or could even vote for Hillary. A person that can't even defend the Americans we had in Benghazi. She couldn't even make a decision. And how could she possibly be qualified to be president?
That's such a great question. And unfortunately, sadly, I can answer it for you. I wish I wasn't able to, but I can answer it for you. That's simply not how Hillary and Bill Clinton are seen by most of the Republicans in the blue blood moderate wing of the party. That's not how they see the Clintons. They don't see Benghazi. They don't see Lewinsky. If they do see those things, they write them off as one-offs, not the kind of things you should judge these people on, because there's a mutual respect for the membership in this club that has happened by virtue of merit. If you get elected president you get elected senator, and if you run for president, you are an accredited, accepted, qualified member of the establishment. And if you've been a president, you're at the upper echelon of it. And so it's a small club, it's rarefied air, and it comes first before any criticism or party loyalty or what have you. And if you doubt me, just check. How many Republicans are you seeing willing to sign on with the Democrats for amnesty, for example? So you're sitting there, you can't imagine somebody who's been president, and look what Bill Clinton did in 8 years or what Obama has done, what Hillary wants to continue. You can't imagine a Republican not opposing it, right? You can't. Right. You cannot imagine that. Well, they don't. They have an entirely different set of parameters in which it's not that they don't condemn this stuff and they don't acknowledge it, but you can redeem yourself. If you've been doinking bimbos in Chappaqua, you can redeem yourself from that. If you travel around the world and make it look like you're giving money for AIDS, or if you because that brings this aura of respect to other members of the establishment. It's a different world. And it's here, I've got a headline here. You I hate to give you this at the end of the program. Republicans advance Obama judicial nominees with weeks to go. This is a story about how the Republicans in Congress are preparing to help Obama get his judges nominated, confirmed, before he leaves office, as the polite and decorous and gentlemanly thing to do. It's the Republicans behaving what they think the people of America would like them to do, be respectful of Obama, he's president, and in turn, they will get the same kind of respect from the Democrats if they ever end up back in the White House. Ha ha. But there you have it. I debated not even doing this story today because we're on a roll on other things. Didn't want to ruin your day. Now look what I've done. I hope you have a great rest of the day, my friends. We plan on it here at the EIB Network, and we'll be back here tomorrow, revved and ready, stoked and prepared, fully loaded to do it all over again with eager anticipation. Thank you so much for being with us, as always. See you then.